Earlier in November, many of us saw the aurora borealis and gazed in wonder at the solar storm that bombarded our planet. But what if the lights had gone out and just never come back on? Not for an hour or a day, but for 3 straight months. This is a real-world scenario that has been studied by government-established commissions tasked with assessing catastrophic threats to the nation. In some of the most severe worst-case projections for an event like a high-altitude EMP, the estimate is quite sobering. Up to 90% of the U.S. population may not survive the first year. The potential causes for a collapse like this are more real than many of us realize. We're talking about a massive solar storm, a sophisticated cyber attack, or a man-induced EMP. While a nationwide 90-day blackout remains a worst-case scenario, the building blocks for this crisis are being laid right now. For years, organizations like the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or NERC, have been sounding the alarm. Their reports warn that huge portions of the country are at high risk for energy shortfalls during peak conditions. There's a growing gap between our soaring demand for electricity, fueled by everything from AI data centers to crypto mining to manufacturing, and the retirement of reliable power plants. Frankly, the grid is strained, and it's getting more vulnerable every year. In this video, we're not just going to talk about the threat, we're going to walk through a timeline of what a 90-day societal breakdown actually looks like, based on expert analysis and assessments of these cascading failures. From the chaos of day 1 to the grim reality of day 90, and most importantly, we'll talk about what it would really take to be in the 10% that makes it. The first day starts with an eerie quiet. The hum of refrigerators, the glow of screens, the background noise of traffic, it all just stops. At first, for a lot of people, it's just a major inconvenience. We've all seen a blackout before, but this one feels different. Traffic lights are out, causing immediate gridlock and a surge of accidents. Communication is the next to fall. Cell towers have backup batteries, but those only last for a few hours, and in reality, your phone likely wouldn't work anyway. After that, it's silence. By the end of day 1, the true gravity of the situation starts to sink in. Without electricity, gas stations can't pump fuel, grocery stores can't operate their checkout systems, and panic buying erupts for whatever people can grab with cash, but most people don't even have cash in their wallets. Back at home, a critical clock has started ticking. In just a few hours, everything in the refrigerator begins to spoil. Hospitals switch to their backup diesel generators, but that fuel is a finite resource. Most hospitals only have enough for a few days at best, so they're forced into a horrific kind of triage, prioritizing only the most critical patients. In these first 72 hours, the thin veneer of modern life cracks wide open, showing us just how fragile our dependence on electricity truly is. Deaths would be limited at first, primarily from traffic accidents, initial panic, and the failure of at-home medical equipment, but the number would begin to climb into the thousands. Within the first week, a much deadlier problem begins to emerge: the loss of running water. Our water systems are modern marvels, but they depend on a massive network of electric pumps and treatment plants, and without power, the pumps stop. Water pressure in the taps slows to a trickle and then to nothing. This is the moment the crisis turns very dangerous for most. Dehydration quickly becomes a leading cause of death, but the water you can find might be just as deadly. With treatment facilities offline, municipal water sources get contaminated. Rivers and lakes near populated areas can become toxic as wastewater systems fail and back up, and diseases we thought were history, like cholera or dysentery, would make a quick return. By day 7, food supplies and stores are either gone or have rotted. The entire supply chain, which runs on just-in-time deliveries, has ground to a halt without fuel for trucks or power for logistics centers. People are now facing 2 threats at once: thirst and starvation. The initial confusion of the blackout has given way to a raw, desperate fight for the basic elements of survival. In just 7 days, the death toll would surge into the tens or even hundreds of thousands from dehydration, exposure, and the shutdown of critical medical services like dialysis centers. As the blackout drags into its 2nd and 3rd weeks, society begins to fracture. Big cities, once hubs of culture and commerce, turn into concrete traps. With no food, no water, and collapsing sanitation, a mass exodus gets underway. Millions of people try to flee urban areas, desperate to find resources in the countryside. This huge migration creates new and terrible conflicts. Rural communities, which might have their own limited supplies, are completely overwhelmed by waves of desperate people. The social contract dissolves, replaced by a simple, brutal math. Your survival versus theirs. Law enforcement, already stretched thin and trying to keep their own families alive, becomes largely powerless to keep order. This is the period of the first great die-off. The most vulnerable, the elderly, the sick, and anyone who depends on refrigerated medicine like insulin, are likely the first to go. Starvation, dehydration, and disease claim countless more. According to some severe projections, the combination of thirst, starvation, disease, and violence would claim the lives of a significant portion of the population within the first month alone. By the end of the first month, the United States as we know it is gone. What's left is a patchwork of isolated communities, fortified farms, and lawless zones run by armed groups. The federal government, with no way to communicate or project power, is effectively gone. During this time, a new horrifying threat looms: the nation's nuclear power plants. While these plants have safety systems to shut down in a blackout, they have a hidden danger: the spent fuel pools. These pools store highly radioactive fuel rods that need constant water cooling. Without power from the grid, and once their on-site diesel generators inevitably run out of fuel, that cooling process stops. If the water in these pools boils off, the exposed fuel rods could overheat and release staggering amounts of radiation into the atmosphere. Experts warn this could create a radiological disaster on a scale that's hard to even imagine. The risk of just one of these events, let alone several across the country, adds a nightmarish layer to the collapse. At this stage, the daily death rate may begin to slow, but the cumulative toll would be catastrophic, with casualties climbing into the tens of millions as the weakest have already perished and the remaining survivors battle over dwindling resources. As the blackout nears the 90-day mark, a new and brutal kind of stability starts to take hold. The great die-off has peaked, and the population has been tragically reduced. America's geography is no longer defined by state lines, but by access to resources. Survivors are clustered in rural areas that have fresh water, farmable land, and defensible locations. The big cities are mostly ghost towns, picked clean and ruled by violence. The idea of a national economy is a distant memory. Barter is the only way to trade. This is the landscape that those horrifying fatality statistics are built on. It isn't one single event that causes the die-off. It's the cascade of secondary effects in a world without power: starvation, disease, violence, and the total collapse of every system that keeps us alive. Surviving the first 90 days means you've made it past the initial shock and the immediate resource crisis, and by this point, the country would have suffered a staggering loss of life, with some severe estimates suggesting that well over half the population could be dead, as the cascading failures of infrastructure take their full, devastating toll. This timeline is a grim, worst-case analysis, but it's based on real-world vulnerabilities and expert assessments. Understanding this sequence of failure is the first step towards real preparedness. It shows us that survival isn't about having the coolest gadgets. It's about securing the absolute basics when the systems we take for granted are gone. A 90-day blackout is the ultimate stress test for our world. It proves that our greatest strength, our interconnected, high-tech society, is also our deepest vulnerability. The cascading failure of our infrastructure, from power and water to food and medicine, shows that preparedness isn't just a hobby, it's a fundamental responsibility. And while the government and power industry are slowly working to harden the grid, these fixes are expensive and take years to implement. The reality is that your safety and the safety of your family in this kind of scenario are in your own hands. The story of a 90-day blackout is a dark one, but it doesn't have to be the story about being helpless. Knowledge is the first step, and preparation is power. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.